To this opening scientific plenary, I'm absolutely delighted to be involved with GFN and to be able to chair this session, where we're fortunate enough to hear from some of the leading international voices in the field of nicotine science. Before introducing our distinguished speakers, I'd just like to take a few moments, if I may, just to reflect on the conference theme. So this meeting is focused on nicotine. In this forum, we consider, from the perspectives of science and advocacy, that equally value objective research evidence alongside lived experience, the current state of evidence on the benefits, disbenefits, and long-term outcomes of using nicotine in its various different routes of administration. Our aim is to thoroughly consider the full range of global perspectives and experiences concerning nicotine use. So why is it now time for us to talk about nicotine? Well, I'd like to remind you all of the fact that, of course, you all know very well that globally smoking remains the leading preventable cause of death and disease. But internationally, in the last 12 months, since we last met here in Warsaw, we've made huge progress in terms of scientific advances in harm reduction research. And, of course, in our public health approaches to tobacco smoking cessation. Recent data in the UK from the Smoking Toolkit study shows a drop in population-level smoking prevalence for the first time to just below 15%. And prevalence amongst young people is much lower. So amongst 16 to 17-year-olds in the UK, the estimate is around 6.2% of the population. In the last 12 months, we've seen major new RCT evidence published that clearly demonstrates, under controlled conditions, the effectiveness of e-cigarettes for smoking cessation. This is really a win for our public health. It gives us the objective evidence that we need to support a harm reduction approach to smoking cessation. Whether or not we believe that science offers us a way forward to progress our harm reduction efforts, there's no doubt in my mind that a focus on robust evidence offers us the best chance of reducing the health-related harms of tobacco smoking through enabling us to influence policy and practice. But that's not to forget, of course, the important user perspective on the recreational use of nicotine, because it's pleasurable in its own right. For the first time in the UK, the NHS Stoptober campaign not only supported but positively endorsed vaping through its Time to Switch campaign. And in my area, in my own local NHS Mental Health Trust, I've seen a sea change coming, such that the promotion of a more is less stance seems to be happening. I.e., if we encourage mental health service users to use more nicotine, not less, in the form of NRT or through vaping, we will see less tobacco smoking. But there is still much to be done. In the last 12 months, we've also seen the USA gripped by a moral panic around youth vaping, a focus on flavours. In China, with an exceptionally high smoking prevalence amongst men in particular, but where strangely, a substantial percentage of e-cigarette products are actually produced, there's a very low current prevalence of e-cigarette use. So this reminds me all too clearly that when we're thinking about nicotine use and looking at the evidence, we must not forget to consider that use is situated within the contextual constraints of policy, culture, industry influence, advertising, and socialisation practices, both at a population level and within subpopulations. Public perceptions of nicotine remain at best cautious and suspicious, and at worst completely inaccurate. Fears remain about the use of nicotine through vaping or through medication, and as many of the presentations in this conference will no doubt emphasise, for some populations, particularly vulnerable and at-risk populations such as those with poor mental health or the least economically well-off groups in our society, tobacco smoking remains highly prevalent. For many, it is a cultural norm and a key indicator of subcultural identity, and this keeps rates of smoking for some populations remaining stubbornly high. So it is time for us to talk about nicotine and to continue to talk about nicotine. We need to understand the latest evidence, listen to consumers, and work through our scientific endeavours and our public health efforts to increase understanding of the relatively small risks of using nicotine in non-combustible form compared to the well-known extremely high risks related to tobacco smoking. So it is my very great pleasure and honour to be able to introduce to you today three speakers who really need no introduction. who are going to succinctly summarise for you the latest scientific evidence on the beneficial effects of nicotine, evidence on the health effects of long-term use of nicotine, and the use of nicotine for smoking cessation. The plan is that we're going to hear from each speaker in turn, who will talk to you all for about 20 minutes, leaving us plenty of time towards the end to hear from our consumer respondent, and also we want to allow lots of time for questions from the audience. So I'd ask you all to save your questions until the end of the session, and then I think someone will come around with the microphone, because it's important that the questions are captured as this session is recorded. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Professor Lynn Dawkins. Lynn is Professor of Nicotine and Tobacco Studies and a distinguished scientist leading a team of researchers at the Centre for Addictive Behaviours at London South Bank University. So welcome, Lynn, to this opening plenary to discuss with us the beneficial effects of nicotine, fact or fiction.